And look, I'm really looking forward to our next interview. During the start of the platform, we've had this guest on a couple of times. And he was, I think, one of the most articulate and pointed critics of some of the government policy surrounding the way we dealt with COVID and how we responded. And our slowness, really, to adapt technologies that were available to get round the terrible policies of MIQ isolation that basically cut this country off from the rest of the world and cut thousands of New Zealanders off from their country. A lot of course, that criticism was focused or became focused on Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. And in what increasingly looks like a carefully calculated political move, she, of course, stepped down. Her valedictory, indeed, was in Parliament last night. And we have a new Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins, who has gone from woke to bloke and appears to be shelving or putting on the back burner unpopular policies. Does this make someone like our next guest come home to Labour? And that guest is Sir Ian Taylor. Ian, lovely to have you with us again, mate. Welcome to the platform.
Morning, Sean. How are you?
Good.
Just first, the comments, I guess, during COVID weren't particularly aimed at the Prime Minister.
No, they were. No, and that's what I'm saying. They were well pointed on policy.
Yeah, and a lot of that had to do with the bureaucracy, the way the Ministry of Health worked, and just refused to listen.
Yeah. Do you think...
in the end, the leader leads. In the end, the leader has to lead,
Yeah.
That is the reality.
And Ian, you were, and there was no doubt you were, I would say, prior to COVID, a Liberal and a Labour Party supporter, and you made that pretty clear as well, and it seemed like you lost some faith in the process of COVID.
Yes, I mean, it's interesting because I never really take a stand. I am a Liberal, I guess. I see things that just seem to me to be wrong, like, the divide that's growing, the economic divide, all those things, and that impacts me. But I have voted National as well. I may have mentioned, but when Bill English kind of introduced the whole idea that government spending had to have a social return on investment, I thought that was really wise. I thought that was a great idea. So I do vote with what a government has to offer, what politicians have to offer. And at the moment, I'm just confused.
Okay, what are you confused about, Ian?
Well, I don't know what anyone's offering at the moment. It is interesting. I was talking to Ian McRae the other day, and it's been interesting watching Minister Hipkins, go. I hate the word woke, but become the bloke. But again, you need to see leadership, and I remember he said that we need to put all this other stuff behind us. Well, in the Maori world view, your past is always in front of you, and if Prime Minister Hipkins is to look at that past, then he's got Tū Pukenga to look at. He's got he was in charge of MIQ. There were a number of issues that I guess he's happy to put behind him, but they need to be in front of him, and we need to see that there's a change.
Yeah, and look, he got caught yesterday, in the little lobby outside Parliament, and he was asked particularly about environmental policies. Oh, well, they're not over. We're just not doing them right now. One gets the horrible feeling, and it depends off your point of view if you think those policies are good or bad, but one gets the feeling they're just kind of playing smoke and mirrors a bit, Ian.
Yes, it's interesting. I was talking to Ian McRae yesterday, and I thought he had a wonderful line. He said, the policy bonfire is now contributing to global warming. and I thought that was really clever. If you just step back from it and you see the changes in all of those things that happen. I mean, I just spoke at a conference here. I'm in Sydney and just spoke at a conference here, and the response, it was really interesting. It's a hotel. It's a big international hotel group. And a lot of the conference was about sustainability. A lot of the conference was about all the things they're starting to do and, to handle that. And, my message was, I have this lovely video of my 2.5-year-old grandson. And my closing message was, this stuff is important, but it needs to happen now. We need to be thinking of our young people, our grandchildren. we owe it to them to act now. And so this policy bonfire is ignoring that.
Mm. Yeah, we'd probably disagree on this, Ian. I think we need to act to have facts.
Tell me.
Facts to base our policy decisions on. And I'll give you an example. We've just had a journalist on today who has been constantly saying NIWA's claim about Cyclone Gabriel. And Cyclone Gabriel is being used as a lightning rod to say, we need more environmental policies and everything. Almost everything NIWA, the National Institute for Water and Atmospheric Research, has told us about Gabriel has been wrong and has been proven very easily to be wrong. It wasn't the most severe storm. It was amongst some severe storms. It wasn't the highest rainfall event because they didn't look at all the rainfall events. And when you base your decisions or your public debate on misinformation, or dare I say it, disinformation, I don't see how you can make good decisions and have good outcomes.
So, there's another thing. So this is kind of what happens every time something like this happens. A single event happens and everybody jumps. That's the reason to change.
Yeah.
You need to take a look at those footsteps that lie in front of us, and there is change. And it's undeniable. It's moving. But, I know how severe that was because my family were all caught in Wairua.
Yeah. Wow.
Don't tell my family it wasn't severe.
Yeah, but historically it wasn't the most severe.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't. Yeah. We can get into that kind of argument. Yeah. So one of the really interesting things is, so let me give you another picture. So, when we talk about climate change, we keep talking about the fact that we endanger the planet. We don't endanger the planet at all. She will survive us.
You got it.
And we've got to stop talking about that. There's a lovely video that we made with a 9-year-old Maori girl, and one of her closing lines was, Papatuanuku, Mother Earth's message is simple. We are all connected, the people, the plants, the animals. But when we step back and look at the way humans treat the planet, it's as though it was put here for them. And actually, I have this lovely thought, the Mother Earth is Papatuanuku, is the God, the Maori is Earth. And I think, what we have to realise is that Papatuanuku is not endangered by us at all. What we are doing is pissing her off. And if we piss her off, she will win in the end. 65 million years ago, a meteorite hit the planet and wiped out everything. And
it was all over. That's right.
It was all over. And look at it now. So I think instead of these arguments about woke and climate change, we just need to step back and look at humans' role on the planet and think, actually, everything that's kind of happened is just going to make it harder for us to live here.
Yeah, I get you, Ian. Look, just going back to COVID, a lot of people still obsessed by, if you like, what went wrong, what we did wrong in COVID and how our response wasn't perfect and people's feelings got hurt and people were separated. How productive do you think it is to do that? Or do we say, geez, that was bad, response wasn't perfect, we got to move on?
Well, again, I think, that's this whole, the concept that, from the Maori worldview, these footsteps are in front. Yes, we do move, but you keep these things are always kept in front of you so that you do learn from them and you never make the same mistake again. And actually, as it's really interesting, and I'm watching with interest, because what they didn't do during COVID was speak to a wealth of people who weren't in the government, weren't ministries, and weren't members of the health department, but there were some hugely intelligent people sitting out there and left to kind of say, we're here to help if you want us.
In fact, even a good idea from people like you, Ian, was rejected if it wasn't their idea. That was the philosophical problem with that administration at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think that's why you keep these things in front. It's not about still throwing out blame. It's like, what do we learn from that out there? There was this wide range of people, and all I was a voice for some of them because they couldn't even get their voice out. But this honestly, this is happening right now. I'm with another group that is looking at what we do about the slash. That if we look at the footsteps that lay down in front of us, Cyclone Bowler, we saw all this happen.
Yeah.
Down in Nelson, we saw it happen. We saw that slash taking out bridges. This group that I'm working with at the moment is saying, let's stop chucking around blame. Let's start to speak rationally about this.
And let's chuck around solutions.
It cannot happen again. And here's the really interesting one. That slash is cash. The value of that stuff that's being washed off the mountain is up to 40 to 50 times the value of the logs we export to China.
You are kidding me. Now, explain this.
No, not at all. So one of the things we're really trying to get this discussion going, and this is backed by science. So I'm the chair of a thing called Product Accelerator, and we work with all the science and research that's being done, try to accelerate that into business ideas. And some of the most amazing research, you should talk to Wayne Mulligan, the amazing research that's being done. The tree is way more than wood. The tree is our source for biofuels, bioplastics, and one of the biggest sources of that is the stuff we leave lying on the side of the hill to rot. And our question now, and again, what I have discovered is some major organisations like Fonterra, Genesis has just run a test using wood pellets that they actually bought from Canada. Why would you bring pellets from Canada if we could make them here? But their frustration was, so this was a very costly exercise, but they bought the wood pellets to turn off the coal for a period of time and test the wood pellets. And the results were stunning. So now our first question is, and you'll have all this, the idea at the moment is all that slash that's lying on the ground, they think they'll go and bury it. So why don't we have a discussion?
Why don't we harvest it?
Well, how much of it? It's really interesting. As you start to have these conversations that are just open, somebody will pop up and say, actually, it might work with some of them, but the stuff in Hawke's Bay's been there so long, it's rotted. So, okay, let's talk about that. But here is the opportunity. Why don't we just pick this idea that slash is cash, not trash? Now, let's get people around the table who know what they're talking about and say, what if we could start this exercise?
I love it, Ian, but you know what we've got at the moment? We've got two political parties heading to an election and saying how much taxpayer funds can we give to the right voters to get elected?
Yes, and we do see that. And again, so it's interesting, but we've had Stuart Nash. We called, Stuart came and sat with the Product Accelerator who ran through all of these, and the conversation was really productive. Chris Luxon, we called him. He came. I'd like to get David Seymour. I'd like to get the Maori Party. I'd like to get the Green Party, because from the Green Party, I don't hear anything from the Green Party talking about the power we have in our forests and that we should stop planting trees for emission trading schemes. Those are just financial instruments that are owned by overseas companies. Those trees have a huge value in taking us away from fossil fuels. A tree is incredibly rich in chemicals and very, very powerful.
Ian, as always with you, I've started an interview that hasn't gone anywhere I wanted to, but it's still bloody interesting. And I am now going to get into this and look at that because I think you've raised some wonderful points. And I guess in that context, it's irrelevant whether or not you're back in love with Labour, isn't it?
No, look, honestly, it's never, for me, it's never been Labour, Maori Party, National. It has always been, are those politicians out there who is making the most sense about giving us a really good country to live in? And at the moment, I can't hear anybody.
Yeah. Hey, can I ask you, is your company Rainbow Tick approved?
I don't
think so, no. Do you think, and this is just apropos of something else, I'm just doing a quick poll on people, do you think men can have babies?
Oh, I saw that. I mean, these are discussions. I sometimes wonder where there are so many, where this stuff even comes from in discussions. I'm probably heading to dangerous territory. I believe in everybody's rights to be something. But I honestly can't understand how we get into arguments about these things when there are so many more important things. But yes, it has to be, if you look at it practically, it must be pretty difficult for a man to have a baby.
You're sitting on the fence. I can't believe it.
Well, it's kind of like...
Just say no, Ian.
No, sometimes you sit on the fence and you go, Jesus, I mean, I'm going to sit up here on the fence and watch the silly argument go on,
Well, I'll tell you, I
read that article, I picked it up and I went, oh my God, what's next?
Yeah, I did a poll yesterday. It's still got a while to run. I've had 674 responses. Who can give birth to human babies, I asked on Twitter. And the options were women, men, and depends if you have the rainbow tick. Thankfully, though it's still concerning, 90% of people say that only women can have babies. 2%... If I could, I admired the discussion that was had by the two reporters, and I'm just surprised they apologised. Well, they not only have they had to apologise, I imagine on threat of losing their jobs, they are going to be re-educated by the Rainbow Tick organisation.
Yeah, I think that is, the sort of issue they brought up. Those are the ones they are. If we're going to be talking about this, that they're the issues that should be open for discussion, and people should be free to start those discussions. People might disagree, but actually, it's an interesting discussion when you try to disagree with what they have to say. And what surprised me most about that was that they had to apologise. Yeah.
And they were quite clearly instructed by MediaWorks to apologise. Hardly free speech, is it?
We should be able to, as we start to look at some of the things that are being said, you start to get these other extremes. And for me, one of the things I've noticed, and I'm very proud to be Maori. Yeah. But as I watch now, I'm watching this. I love Sir Tiffany O'Regan. We talk a lot, and his thing, which I totally agree with, is we're not careful. We're now replacing one false narrative with another, and that other is being led by some really elite Māori who will never have to worry about how they buy their groceries at a supermarket.
Yeah, I hear you, Ian. Look, it's always good. I don't know why. We always jack up an interview with you and you're the right person for me to talk to, and I go away feeling, when I'm a little bit down at hill, I feel much more enthused about the world. So I thank you again for joining us on the platform, and we must catch up soon. Good on you, Ian.
Thank you, Sean.
Cheers. Sir Ian Taylor. Well, I don't know, that was just a really interesting chat with him, and I was really, really interested in his take on the Rainbow Tick. Now, we've got the number for them. We'll probably give them a ring after 9, see if the Rainbow Tickies will get into it. Sean, re-education is bullying by the powers that be. It is absolutely bullying. It's intellectual bullying and it's cry bullying. Now, wasn't that a good idea about the slash? I was thinking Stuart Nash slash. He's still the Minister of Forestry, but I could not get excited about his resignation. Stuff happens. It's not the end of the world. Ian Taylor, unfortunately, having unelected people making decisions on our COVID response goes against what people voted on. Oh, I don't know. I don't know if it did. Sean, next time you talk to Meng Foon, can you ask him if pregnant white men can have a contribution to make to society? No, Kieran, they don't, because there are no pregnant white men. That is a silly idea. Sean, am I silly for thinking we could burn the slash and return the nutrients to the ground? Just need to tell the greens to go away. Well, there you go. Ian's thinking about a solution there. I'm sure no COVID debate response was allowed, as Ian said. That's right, Steve. And he pointed it out, and we had him on the platform pointing it out during COVID. Sean, curious that you think Jacinda got the COVID handling right. No, I never said that. When she stuffed every other thing she stuffed. Cheers, Steve from Central. No, I think collectively we did the best we could, and it wasn't perfect. Wow, that was just really... I'm just getting my head together, actually. And so nice, we got a call from Garston. We get a call from... And that shows you the reach of the platform. So his phone goes off with social media. You know, this is why we got way more listeners than Today FM. Also because we're allowed to say what we think here without being re-educated. And what a great show when I can start with the Life of Brian clip. You found that funny, didn't you, Ben? You hadn't really seen that before?
Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, it's John Cleese.
And don't forget that is 30, that's decades ago, and they were just making the call on exactly the way the world turned out, weren't they?
It's a fantastic prediction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is other stuff young Padawan, I must teach you about Monty Python and their predictions for the future.